Yep. Morena koutou. In order for us to have a quorum this morning, I will take the chair position this morning, so Dean can make up our quorum as a hapu iwi member. So, good morning, members and staff. I welcome you to this meeting of Te Maru o Kaituna Authority Forum meeting. I remind members and staff that this meeting is being video recorded and will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. Members who are zooming in, good morning. Can you please keep your cameras turned on, raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak, and keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. On that, kia koe, te rākau mō te reo. Karakia. Dean.
E te mihi kia koutou katai mai nei I tēnei wā, ka timata kia mātou hui mo te karakia. Unuhia, ko te paumō, ko te pauruta, ko te pau whakahuranga ki te tōnga. Te manuhira ki te tāui, ko keri ki te matamehu ki te ora. Kimihia. Whano, haramai te toki, haumie, huie, haiki.
Thank you, Dean. To open our meeting proper, I'll take apologies, please. I currently have Commissioner Bill Wasley, Councillor Lani Kereopa, Nikki Douglas, Councillor Jane Nees. I do see Jane, so this is for you to leave at 11 a.m. Erin Thompson and Picky Thomas. Are there any others? Commissioner Sher. Jenna Rolliston.
Madam Chair, I may need to leave by 12 o'clock as well.
Councillor White, leaving at 12 p.m. Oh, very good. Can I have a mover for those, please? And a seconder.
I'll move.
Thank you, Dean. Seconder. Thank you, Nick. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Thank you. Just going through our format for the day, public forum. There is no public forum. Items on the agenda. Items not on the agenda, excuse me. There are none. Order of business. There is no change to the order of business. I'll call now for declarations of conflict of interest. There are no conflicts. Thank you. Minutes to be confirmed. Okay, on page 7 of your agenda, can I have a mover for those as being a true and correct record?
I'll move the minutes.
Thank you. Dean, can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Dawidi. Any matters arising?
Just one, Madam Chair. Just in the resolution around contributing $5,000 to Te Tukatu Moana, Momake 2, for that climate change adaptation plan project. Have we done that? Have we? Might be a question for him or someone.
Might be a question for Dean. Pam. Sorry, Dean, can you just repeat that, please?
Just in the resolution on page 11, Te Maru o Kaituna River Authority contributes $5,000 to Te Tukatu Moana, Momake 2, the Maki 2 Climate Change Adaptation Plan project. So have we done that?
Through you, Chair, not yet. There was a little bit of discussion about which entity the payment would go to. The project is obviously a community collaboration, which has been led by Te Runanga o Ngāti Whakaue ki Maki 2. So, that seems the logical place to make the payment to if the members are in agreement that take place in that way.
Yeah, I would agree if we need to put that through, formalise that. So I'd move that resolution if needed.
The resolution talks about the project,
Okay, what page?
not who it gets paid to. Yeah. I'm happy to take the guidance from here. That's okay.
Yeah, I think as the advice just given to us via PIM, I think that it goes to Te Runanga or Ngāti Whakaue. We will go with that. I'm happy to move that. Needed.
So we're revising out of the minutes. So through you, Madam Chair, I don't think we need a new resolution. It's just clarity. The resolution is clear that the members intended to make a contribution to the project. It just wasn't clear from the resolution who the money would go to. But the project is led by Te Runanga o Ngāti Whakaue, who gave the presentation through Rowana Bennett last time. So I'm comfortable that the Regional Council on Te Maru's behalf make the payment to that entity to give effect to the resolution, if you're all happy with that, which it sounds like you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, you don't get, well, assume it's done here.
Right. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to our presentations, and our first presentation is on the Kaituna River diversion monitoring results, and I'll hand the rākau to Pim.
Thank you, everybody. Jenny, is that the remote control for the presentation there, or are you going to flip the slides as we go through? Okay, yep. Well, kia ora koutou, everybody. You'll remember for many years now, we've been talking about the Kaituna rediversion, and Te Maru was an active participant in the consenting process between 2014 and 2016. And then Te Maru was also involved through its iwi members in the design and implementation and post-implementation monitoring phases. So this presentation is an opportunity just to feed back to you some of the monitoring results from the 3 years since the gates were opened underneath Ford Road to allow the awa back into the river. So this diagram is probably familiar with all of you, but just a quick reminder that that 1 kilometre channel was constructed through Otaiparia, 12 2.5 by 2.5 metre stainless steel gates were installed underneath Ford Road where those little orange dots are, where it says inlet structure. The old river channel next to Ford Road, between Ford Island and Ford Road, was blocked, was filled in order to get fresh water from the Kaituna into the estuary rather than recirculating seawater. And a lot of land on both Papahikahawai Island and Te Pāika, the land formerly owned by Alan Brain, has been converted to estuarine or freshwater wetland. There are also some causeways removed where those 2 white circles are in the estuary, and a wooden footbridge constructed between Maketu Spit and Papahikahawai Island to provide alternative access for the island's trustees and owners. Next slide, please, Jenny. So there are a few things I wanted to cover in the presentation. So just a quick recap. Some comments about recent climate and hydrology that's been a little out of the ordinary. Some surveying results showing you cross sections and how they've changed over time. Some ecological monitoring results. A couple of points on operations and maintenance, and then see if there are any questions from you as members. Right, so a wee recap on the history. In 1956, the Kaituna River was diverted out to sea at Te Tumu in order to provide better gravity drainage for the surrounding land, which allowed wetlands to be converted into pasture. Even at that time, the district engineer, Dale Revington, highlighted that diverting all the freshwater from the estuary would potentially have negative effects on it, and he didn't recommend it. But the Crown insisted on a full diversion in order for the catchment board to qualify for the 3.5 to 1 subsidy that was available at the time. So yesterday's solution becomes today's problem. The estuary slowly degraded, and over the subsequent 2 or 3, 4 decades, Te Arawa and the local community noticed a decline in the health of the estuary and its ability to provide for their needs. In 1979, the Makitu Action Group, led by the likes of Pia Kerr and the late Barry Wilkinson and several others, got involved and called for the return of the river. And there was a petition in 1984 with about 3,000 signatures that the late Sir Peter Tapsell took to Parliament. Cabinet then said to DOC in 1988, go and fix it. They had a go. They put some little wee culverts underneath Ford Road, but it was only about 4% of the river's flow, which just wasn't enough for the estuary. The estuary continued to degrade. In 2012, the Regional Council voted to allocate capital funding to do a maximum flow partial rediversion, which was basically get as much water back into the estuary as you can and create at least 20 hectares of wetland whilst keeping Te Tumu Cut open. And so that's what has been worked on since then. And in February 2020, the first gates opened. That's a wee recap. That's what the upper estuary looked like in 2014. And here's a similar view in 2022. You see it's quite different. And in my view, significantly improved. We've just had Andy Belcher from Makitu get a drone image that replicates the 2014 photo exactly. So next year I'll show you that one. Climate and hydrology. So people will have noticed that it was wet between the 30th of May 2022 and August 2023. And you can see that in the Kaituna River flow at Te Matai. Here you'll see that the flow sort of hovers around the 1 metre mark on the gauge for most of the previous 2 years. And then in mid-22, it jumps up by half a metre or more and stays up that height. And that was partially because Rotorua's lake level was really high, so the Ohau Channel was maxed out, and then the Orchid Gates were maxed, and inflows from the tributaries in the hills behind Te Puke were also contributing. So those flows and levels in the Kaituna have been substantially elevated. They have started to come down again now, though, with the more normal rainfall patterns that we've been seeing recently. But just wanted to highlight to you that since we opened the gates in February 2020, we've had 2 relatively dry years with fewer than normal flood events, followed by 1 extremely wet year with significantly more floods than usual. So sometimes that can influence what happens. Right, some surveying results for you. So you might remember that there was a bit of concern about the spit and whether or not the extra water going through the estuary would blow out the spit about 400 metres down from the surf club opposite the Whakaue Marae. And we have seen about 4 metres of erosion on the estuary side. And that was already eroding a little bit, but it has accelerated. We're lucky that we have seen accretion on the coastal side, but it is something that we're keeping a pretty close eye on. So the approach we're taking is that if our coastal scientists consider that there is an imminent risk of a spit breach due to the lack of sand at that location, that we will consult with tangata whenua and use the permitted activity coast care rules to move a little bit of sand to reduce that risk. The reason for trying to prevent that from happening is if it breaches there, a lot of sand will enter the estuary, a huge amount of sand, similar to what happened between 1990 and 1999. And that's not a particularly good thing for the estuary. And the second reason is that in the long run, the rediversion will reduce the risk of a spit breach. It's just adapting at the moment. So if you imagine the hydraulic capacity of the channel through the lower estuary is a certain size, and with the extra water that's going through it, it's putting more pressure on the back of the spit at the moment. Over time, we're expecting the flood tide delta, or that big pile of sand out in front of the marae, to erode at the margins of the channel and provide for the capacity that extra water needs. And we're seeing some evidence of that in the cross sections. It's just in the short term, it's expanding on both sides.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? Just on that, Pim, the fact that there has, some erosion occurring and the expectation was that some might occur on this bit. I'm assuming that in the whole design of this thing that there had been some intense sedimentology studies done on that. Is that sedimentology study, are the findings of that playing out in what's happening here?
Through you, Chair, yes. So DHI Water and Environment did a 3D hydrodynamic model that included sediment movement predictions. And what they predicted was that if you were a piece of sand in that lower estuary, prior to the diversion, your movement was generally east to west, heading up the estuary as it was filling in by a variable rate, but up to 13,000 cubic meters per year. Post diversion, the sediment residual shows that those pieces of sand are on average moving out of the mouth of the estuary, causing a deepening of the channel and putting that sand back into the coastal marine area. So it is behaving as predicted. Although it is fair to say that the years that we've had, with 2 dry years and then 1 extremely wet year, have meant that it's hard to say whether it's going slightly faster or slightly or at the same rate that we had expected those changes to occur. But both Ben Tuckey, who did the modelling, and Stephen Park, who did the ecological studies, have said that the changes they're observing in the estuary are slightly better than they would have hoped for, given that we're 3 years in. So,
23 fishing boats outside the carters there. There used to be 3 channels. And this is in Maketu. There's one close to the marae, the one in the middle, and one on the far side. Now you have sedimentation that is about 2 feet high, 3 feet high. You used to walk on pippies in those days, and those were natural flows. They were natural flows. There's a whole lot of issues with the sedimentation buildup in the Kaituna. And it's happened in the Waihi too. I remember going to the court and saying that the issue is right up further. And I claimed that the Wairake was navigatable. That was in the part of the appeal, and it was. When you had smart growth came along and supposed to manage growth, but smart growth went along and got on the focus of market-driven growth. And as a consequence, a lot of the natural wetlands became prime places to build, to make millions. In other words, they had more responsibility towards bricks and mortar rather than fauna and water. Smart growth was like that. They left from their original intent was to manage growth, that's manage infrastructure, to market-driven growth. And now we're getting the impacts now. But the Kaituna River actually needs that literature review, because there's a story even with Papahikahawai there. And you may recall we had that argument in Rangiwuwehi and Rangiwuwehi and Waitaha claiming Papahikahawai.
So through you, Chair, we did do a literature review before starting the project's construction, and I have all of those files here at the council if you would like to see them. So they informed the way in which the project was designed and implemented. So just continuing on, here are a couple of images from Papahikahawai, and just like to acknowledge the contribution of the late Wharekōnehu Te Moni, who put many, many hours into this mahi, who passed a month or so ago. But the island's restoration is looking fantastic. Water quality and ecology. So this is an aerial shot from 2014, that shows you that area between the Brainland, the Papahikawai Island and Makitu Spit. And you'll see the brightly coloured algal blooms and cyanobacteria creating that yellow-orangey colour. It used to change from green to yellow to orange to brown. And there was something like 600 millimetres or more of anoxic mud in that 13-hectare part of the estuary because it had been blocked from tidal flushing and subject to very small high nutrient inflows. Here's a picture of the same place now. So you'll see that the flushing has had a hugely beneficial effect in that part of the estuary, and the oxygen levels in the sediment and the diversity and abundance of shellfish, worms, crustacea, etc., is significant, as well as I think 43 species of bird have now been recorded on the habitat here at Te Pāika since that land was converted to wetland. I'll skim over some water quality and shellfish results, but feel free to jump in if you want me to spend more time. So these are the locations where we've monitored water quality and shellfish. Here are some of the results for E. coli in Pipi, both in summer and winter. So we do flesh monitoring there. And the logarithmic scale on the left gives you an indication of how those results can vary significantly from in the low, in the single digits right up to the thousands. The prediction was that the rediversion would slightly elevate the percentage of time that shellfish were exposed to bacteria levels above the health guidelines, from about 12% of the time to about 19% of the time. And that's because the water in the Kaituna River, while it's improved a lot over the last 40 years in terms of bacteria, it's still sitting at around about a median of 180. And that does mean that the inflows from the Kaituna, especially during rainfall, can increase the risk. Now, the guidance from Council and from the Medical Officer of Health, Public Health, is still the same, that people should avoid gathering within the first 3 to 5 days after a rainfall event. And the results are sort of bearing that out, that they are similar to previous results, but perhaps in the upper range of what we would have seen before.
Thanks, Pim. It's good to see the improvement in these sort of, E. coli, etc. Because one of the things that I know from the Regional Council's point of view, and looking at the comparative of the waterways and the levels of pollution, if you like, nitrogen, phosphorus, E. coli and others, there's a big bold red line right through Makitu and the issue, and also Waihi. And those are the two that stood out. And I hear your point around improvement by virtue of what's been done to restructure and get the flows going. But upstream, or the contributors during those times you mentioned, everything's flushed back into the estuary. So we can only hope that upstream things have improved. And I guess that comes down to land use options and diversification if we want to get the fullest and best result for the Kaituna and the Waihi estuary as well.
I'm mindful too that it's a very popular kite gathering place. What's the current status at the moment? Is it okay to be gathering at the moment?
So Waihi estuary has a permanent shellfish gathering warning on it because of it's the proportion of time that the samples exceed the guidelines. So you'll see there the 230 per 100 grams is the current safe limit, and you'll see there that about 55% of the samples in summer and about 60% of the samples in winter at Makitu are above that level. Now, so Makitu is still okay to sample and to take shellfish from, except in the first 3 to 5 days after rainfall. But I wouldn't be taking shellfish from there immediately after rainfall. And in response to Councillor White's statement, you're exactly right. And this was discussed when we were going through the consenting process. Should we, we've seen a 500% reduction in bacterial concentrations in the lower river since the 1980s because of effluent treatment on dairy farms and Te Puke's wastewater treatment, etc. But there's still a ways to go. And the question was, should we divert the river now, knowing that it is still a bit paru, or should we wait until it's even cleaner? And the decision that came out of that process was, let's do it now, because the flushing will have a lot of ecological benefits, but we still need to achieve those further reductions in bacteria through the NPSFM plan change in changing land use rules and practices.
So when we're speaking Makitu, is that inclusive of Little Waihi?
No, that's separate. So the results here are just for Makitu estuary. We have got monitoring online available to everybody of shellfish gathering results in Little Waihi estuary. And I can talk to anybody who's interested about those in the morning tea break, if you like.
Yeah, I would recommend, Madam Chair, that, that the Waihi Estuary project actually be brought to a presentation here as well to give a sort of comparative, in the same sort of territory, if you like, even though they're two separate catchments in their own right. But I think just getting back to the decision around whether, moving first, to do this and then, or the other way around, waiting till it cleans up, I think it was the right decision. Because what it's done, in my view, is exemplar. It's really highlighted the need for cleaning up the other contributions in there if we really want the ideal and meet the sort of environmental standards that we expect, where our people can gather seafood again, where people can swim in it again, all those sorts of things. So it does highlight it. And I think this is good news in that respect, that we actually are flushing and cleaning and reducing, but ultimately, there's still a lot of journey to go, and it's upstream of that needs to happen.
Oh, I agree with you, Councillor White, and I'm sure Dean will as well, but I'll let Dean speak. Kia ora, Dean. Did you put your hand up to speak?
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. The area out there, all that swampland and that Tapuigi have a name for that area, Te Ate o Tika. And Te Ate is the liver of the fish. And when we talk about the fish, it's Tika Maru. So if you picture how that sits, that's where the liver is. If you put bad substance down the top of the river and it goes through, then the liver has to try and clean and it works harder. If we put clean substance down through the top of the river and all its tributaries, then the job down the at the liver is a lot easier. And so I'll just leave that as that. But I suppose
a great example of Mātauranga Māori here.
Mātauranga Māori, yeah. But I'm just wondering, because we're moving into summer, and I heard there's notifications or there's signage down there about the pipi and that, the shellfish at Waihi. I'm just wondering if we need something more explanatory, so that people understand why you can't take, or if you do, then it's at your own detriment, and so, and then maybe some of the, I suppose it's just communications and signage, but maybe some of the sorts of things that might happen. So you if you are kind of not intoxicated, but if you suffer from eating pipi or something like that, I don't know, but I haven't been down Waihi for a while, so I'm not quite sure what that signage and that might look like. But if something like that could be in place, might help. It's more around community communication, I suppose.
So through you, Madam Chair, we can note that as something to talk to Toi Te Ora Public Health about, because they're responsible for those signs. And then it's also a Western Bay consideration as to, whether the signage is permitted at the access points. But I can take an action in the minutes to talk to both of those agencies about signage.
Comment. Your science has to take into account customary right, Māori customary right, because if you go back in history, and I'm talking about the Whairere and the Kaikokupu, just above Waihi, before they drained that place, when they drained it, the mullet used to go right up there. Mullet used to go straight up there in big schools. The mullet, mana whenua is not about ownership. And you find that a lot of our people talk about Manawhenua, they're talking about property rights. What they should be talking about is customary right, because customary right is the knowledge. And what happens at the bottom goes way back, probably goes up to the mountains. And I can remember when ducks in the Little Waihi, the quota used to be about 40 ducks. They were a pest. And 40 swans, 80 ducks. Used to go and shoot them away because that link was a link to Marata. Marata was a breeding place for the ducks and they used to come across, you see. So until you find the whole networks, you're only reacting to Little Waihi and Maketu. The story is bigger than that. You have to look at riparians, you have to look at clean creeks right up the mountains and right down to the mouth, because that's where it all ends up. And all we're doing is reacting.
I think our kaupapa this morning, though, our discussions now, Maru, have been around the health and the gathering of kai. I take on board what you're saying, and it is noted, but our discussion really has been focusing around the kai gathering and the impact it has if our people are eating it.
Yeah, but we've even lost touch with that ourselves, because we never used to fish for kahawai all the time, even though they came in big schools. You came certain times of the year, you fish for that, various fish. We've lost that because we've been controlled by MAF. We seem to have all the scientific hoo-ha.
So through you, Madam Chair, this is just a presentation about the Kaituna rediversion. Joe Watts will be talking about the NPSFM project shortly, which is another, part of the puzzle that deals with some of those catchment challenges that you're talking about. I'll accelerate through the slides now because I'm just conscious of time. But thank you for the questions. This slide shows you the bacteria and nutrient concentrations in the water over time. And so you'll see there that the range is again sort of similar to previous years, although the 2023 range is wider. So both lower and higher samples, but similar to 2013, in fact. And then down the bottom there, you'll see the results for nutrients at low tide in the estuary. And it does reflect the fact that nitrate has been generally increasing in the river over the last few decades and is kind of almost double what it was back in 1975. So it's gone from about 0.4 parts per million to about 0.8. This concentration in the estuary is at a location which includes mixing with salt water. So you'll see the concentration there is about 0.3 to 0.5 parts per million there in 2023, okay? 0.4 is the guideline for nitrate that estuarine ecologists suggest we try and keep things underneath. So if you draw a line along that 0.4 mark, that yellow line, when it's underneath that, then it's generally okay. Water column salinity. So as you would expect, when you put a whole lot more river water into an estuary, you drop the salinity. And the red line shows you the salinity at site 5 beforehand. The other lines show you the different years post rediversion. And what I just wanted to point out here, so 35 PSU is fully saline seawater and 0 is pure freshwater, Hamawana Springs style. And you'll see there that the optimal range for seagrass is in that 10 to 15 PSU, which is one of the objectives that we had when we went about doing this project. And it's pleasing to see that we are hitting that 10 to 15 range quite regularly now, post rediversion. This is another one which is, it'll take me 30 seconds to explain it, but it's a good news story. What I want you to do is look at the years on this graph. And so you'll see red is before the rediversion and yellow is the most recent one. This shows you dissolved oxygen concentration in the water column in the estuary. And the bigger the fluctuation, the more eutrophic that ecosystem is, which is bad, because those overnight lows in dissolved oxygen concentration are the things that kill the fish. So you'll see the green line and the red line shows you quite big fluctuations in dissolved oxygen, whereas the yellow line and the dark blue purple line have got much smaller fluctuations, which means the overnight low is nowhere near as poor as it was beforehand. So that's a real good news story, because it means that the fish and other and invertebrates that want to live in the estuary are not limited by a lack of oxygen. I won't go over this slide. These slides are just a little sort of snapshot into the density and size of shellfish. This one here is worth mentioning. So most of you will know that if an estuary has too much mud in it, fine mud, it tends to be an indicator of poor health, because it typically has low oxygen levels and it can sort of starve some of those critters. So the total organic carbon content is an indicator of how much muddy biomass there is. And you'll see that when the rediversion was undertaken, the TOC dropped markedly and is now sitting in the nice healthy band in that mid-upper estuary, Papahikahawai Creek area. Another indicator which is not so good is algal density. And you'll see there that algal dominance, I suppose, has dropped away markedly since those flushing flows have been added to the estuary. And this next graph shows you that graphically. So if you look, the top graph there, it goes right back to 1939 when we first had aerial photography of the estuary. And you'll see there that there was hardly any macroalgal sort of weed growing in the estuary. We can't tell what it was because the photo resolution is pretty poor and it's sort of black and white. But as we go through time, you'll see quite a buildup of macroalgae, and the types of macroalgae are identified there. So we've got the Gracilaria, the ulva sea lettuce, blue-green algae, which is the cyanobacteria, and then unidentified. And you'll see that they peaked around about 2014 and have subsequently dropped right back to levels that are higher than, but not substantially dissimilar to, levels back when the estuary was in good condition. You talked about pippy beds, Maru. Here's a photo of the lower estuary pippy bed where one of our survey transects goes through. So Peter Virko took this image, walking across them. And what we're seeing there is that some of these pippies are exposed because of the excess sand in the lower estuary. The expectation is that the extra flushing from the rediversion will gradually increase the size of that subtidal habitat, which will make a slightly bigger area available for pippies to be in their optimal ecological niche down in the bottom part of the estuary.
When was that taken?
That was taken in February, I think. Bottom right, 2023 photo. We've also, in response to some feedback from the Makitu community, we've extended some of the transects, the survey transects, right across from the spit to the boat ramp and from the spit to the marae. And one of our staff, there's a picture of him up to his neck as he's walking across to do that surveying recently.
So the return, is that as a result of the work that's been done that's prolific like that, or has that always been like that?
I think it's probably always been like that. And there are stories of the pippy beds being much bigger when the estuary had much larger subtidal area. Maru was talking about the boats. There's pictures of boats being moored in the lower estuary as late as the 1970s. So I guess one of the things to remember here is that it took a few decades for the estuary to respond to the diversion of the river in 1956 by filling in. So we can probably expect it to take a few decades for the estuary to respond in the other direction with the flushing flows added back in. But it's good to see so many pippy growing down in the lower estuary anyway.
Just put that road from Makitu to Te Puhi there. It was old Te Amaha who predicted that that's the beginning of the ruination of the what, because the natural flow of the Pukai Ngataru, that's that wetland below the cemetery and all that. When they put the road through, he predicted that that's the beginning of the downfall of because Whakatu estuary is like a toilet. It has to be flushed properly. Otherwise, you only half flush the toilet, and the crap stays in the.
That's part of the problem, Maru. The Lake Rotorua is flushing itself down the Kaituna as well.
I guess the good story is that we're making measures to improve.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I can just comment on that, with PIMS, this is all great news story, and I think it's really great, and I think at some point, PIM, and I'm assuming we're communicating this great news story. I mean, there's still a ways to go, and I think that's the point. But this is quite graphic demonstration of the improvement, and I look at it from a point of view as a baby boomer, looking that it's pretty late in my generation, but looking to the future for the next generation to gather pippies once again and not get poisoned by the fact. So I'm encouraged by that, because that's what I'm looking at here. It's work in progress towards the next generation being able to enjoy that history again. And so I think that's the delight in it. And I really want to congratulate the decision makers who made all this happen. And I know, Maru, you're referencing a lot of historical issues that our people observed. Unfortunately and sadly, contemporary space and practices have actually created another problem in another way, and in a way that's that contemporary scenario that has to deal with this now and make the changes that we're getting right now. And I just want to reflect that, Madam Chair, largely because I have to go soon. But I just wanted to congratulate the team on really these results, quite spectacular. And so keep the good news going, because I don't see too many bad news at all, other than the fact that, and I'm sure that there's some news that could be better, but I think, just bottom line, it's really good to see.
Well, thanks for that feedback. I think you're right. I'll try and wrap this up in the next couple of minutes. So this is just a picture of the seagrass in the southeastern corner of Maketu Estuary, and I think, Rowana, are you online at the moment?
Yes, I am, Pam.
Just acknowledging the work of both Ngāti Whakaue and Ngāti Pikiao's Taiao teams helping us out with keeping an eye on this. It's a little wee treasure that's, trying its hardest to re-establish in the estuary. And, the mud that came down with all the floods in 22-23 gave it another hammering. But hopefully, we'll see this start to restore itself through the estuary as it continues a slow journey towards better health.
Thank you, Pam, and acknowledge your support for this kaupapa too.
Thank you. Just wanted to highlight that this new diversion channel at Otaiparia, we have just recently placed some additional rock there in response to some erosion that had been observed post diversion. It's a combination of issues, partly the nature of the stop bank, but also partly because of the boat traffic. That people seem to ignore the 5-knot rule going up and down that channel, and it just puts a bit of wave erosion there. So rather than running the risk of long-term failure, we thought we'd put some rock there, and I have consulted with all of the iwi partners in the area before going ahead with that. Also, just to note for you that we have observed in a couple of places a wee bit of corrosion on the sheet piles, which initially alarmed us. We've got some specialist advice, and it's within the acceptable range, but it's at the upper end of the acceptable range. So we're keeping a bit of an eye on it. Apparently, it is, one of the harshest possible environments for sheet piles down in that coastal area, being wetted and then dried out. And one of the things that actually was pointed out to us by the specialist was that the high nitrate concentrations and the low pH from the adjacent drain outlet and pump station could be a contributing factor to the accelerated erosion. That's it. Kia ora.
Questions from the members?
Just a bit of a comment. With the seagrass, is there any plans on really trying to grow sort of that? Because I know a lot of research coming out now showing that seagrass absorbs more carbon than trees. So they're looking at it's an opportunity for the climate change and getting that carbon out of the atmosphere. And yes, it was quite cool research, really. As I said, Papatuna, she has the answers, and that's one of them, I think.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, restoring coastal wetlands from salt marsh, seagrass, potentially mangroves, as is the case overseas in some places as well. I think that will be a bigger and bigger focus area for us. And you'll note in the Pukahina area, council has recently bought a dairy farm and will retain 30 hectares of that dairy farm in co-ownership with the 5 iwi collective there, which will be restored to coastal wetlands. And one of the objectives, among many others, is to try and catch as much carbon as we can.
Yes, I think just want to add to that very quickly, because I think it's got relevance, is being able to excite international researchers as well, and from different quarters who have come in and participating, looking at the blue carbon opportunities with wetlands and its comparison to current farming practices, and how actually farmers who actually contribute to the wetland growth might actually benefit from that as well as everybody else benefiting. And so putting a bit of good news into farming practice. So that's already active. So they're already establishing monitoring sites to look at the carbon sequestration from the potential growth of wetlands. So it's exciting stuff.
Pam, just one question. While we're looking at the development or return of seagrass and makatu, are we actually doing that throughout the coastal regions in the Mapiniti?
We're not actively restoring seagrass anywhere yet. All we're doing in this case is trying to improve the conditions for it. So we have had a few conversations about transplanting seagrass back into Makatu from Tauranga Moana when we thought it had all gone, but it popped up by itself again. And so the idea is if we can just change the conditions to be slightly more in favour of seagrass, manage the swans, manage the sediment inputs, reduce the concentrations of nutrients, then hopefully nature will do it by itself. Yeah.
You're talking about riparians now, and I'm quite interested in riparian. Yeah, I'd like to link it with what they call the Queen's chain. If the Queen's chain, if there was a plant that's economically viable, that has some economics in it, planted on the Queen's chain. That might be ryegrass or something. That'd be a possibility.
So through you, Chair, yeah, the marginal strips, reserves, esplanade strips, etc., that are held either by district councils or the Department of Conservation, they're definitely opportunities to add to the riparian management in the region. And so through a different work program, we're taking advantage of those opportunities wherever we can.
Because the landowners might be able to make a profit out of the Queen's chain. You had the right. I'm not saying they should be growing dope, but some commercially viable plant.
Thank you for that, Pam. That was excellent. We're going to move on to the Chair's report. I'm going to hand the rako back to you, Dean, for the Chair's report. Listening to me.
We've had a fantastic year, I believe. Plan Change 5, such a success to get something, into the regional policy statement for consideration. So that's a plus. Actually, yeah, I see Alva down there. I think Te Tinia Tuna that work plan has been a great success, and mainly because I think when we looked through it, we had a look at some of the projects and who might lead those projects, and I think for iwi, it's been a quiet success, and I think for iwi, capacity and those sorts of things that has been, I suppose, practiced to try and participate. And so I'm really proud of our Pataka Kai program and how that's going through and how that's working with the other councils. And we'll see a presentation this afternoon from Alba in regards to the landing spaces and those sorts of things. Those are the sorts of things that have always been on the minds of the various iwi who are in this area. So I think that's a success too, because if you think back, Te Maru o Kaituna was really only charged to do a plan, and it's upon ourselves. We took on the work to actually develop a 10-year plan on how we're going to propose to deliver these objectives that we came up with. So I think that's a huge success. But I think also, I want to kind of acknowledge everyone here, because everyone here who sits at this table is involved with Te Maru. We all have other lives outside of this, and so it's that commitment that we give to being part of this, and I believe that's because the value of the work, as we've just seen with the last presentation, is where the future lies, and I think all of us are here to do our part in the long journey. And just picking up on what Councillor White said around the future generations, and so I acknowledge Maru, you have a very long history in that, and always have, and it's important that we remember the journey. But I do believe that our job is to do our part to ensure that the future is a good one for coming generations. So I just want to kind of, this being our last meeting of the year, I just want to acknowledge the hard work that the board members here do and your commitment to this kaupapa. Secondly, all the staff that come with the various councils and the councils who are involved in this, I mean, a huge mihi to all of you. You're the ones that go out and do all the hard work and all the talks, and you strategize and you communicate and bring those answers back to this table. And I believe that every time we get that answer, it's always kind of in line with the overall goal that we're trying to achieve. So to all the staff from all the councils, I'd just like to express my thanks on behalf of the Te Maru o Kaituna to all of you. And just from me personally, I'd just like to thank the staff that give me advice and help me in making decisions around how to move forward and those sorts of things. So I just want to kind of just say that really. This year's been I suppose, with the change of government, and we all know Winston's the deputy, so no, that's just me. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah.
Dean's got the hotline.
Yeah. So and this whole conversation over the past year and that around co-governance and that sort of thing, and I believe Te Maru is a very good example of what co-governance can be. And it's about working together. And that's where I think that Tini Tuna plan comes into play. It's a physical expression and practice on how we all work together to gain the actions and the outcomes that we're looking for. But we must always remember it's not the end there. So it's going to carry on, and so we do our part in this journey. So that's really all I have to say at this point in time. But I just wonder, is it too early to say a Merry Christmas? Yeah, it is, I think. It's just, I think it's because I'm looking like Hana Koko today with my beard and that. So, yeah, look, because it's the last hui of the year, I wish everybody a safe holiday period, and do try to have a holiday, everyone. I know sometimes we can't turn off or switch off, but I wish everyone a healthy break over the Christmas period, and we'll see you all in the new year, I suppose. So that's really all I have to say. But Madam Chair, if you're going to kahuri te rākau, I don't know, there may be others. Okay, kia ora.
Sorry, I did open it for you to make comment, but there are no comments. So there's no comments from the floor?
And he talked about collaboration. I think our collaboration should be quite wider than just the regional council and others, Department of Conservation and all of them, because it's about ganging up on the government. Unless we all come together, global warming is exhibit A is all over the world. It gets all over the place. And of course,
Put your microphone on, Maru.
It's on.
Oh, can you just move it
Yeah.
closer to you?
and collaboration needs to be a bit more than just us. You need all your councils and all that. And in order to succeed, I think everybody needs to bring what strengths they got. Some of it is purse strength, some of them it's acts of decree and all that sort of stuff, to bring it together. And if I go on that thing that these issues are mountains to the sea, and if you want to clean up the bottom of the river, you have to clean up the mountain where it all begins. So that includes riparians, clean creeks, and all that sort of thing, because the mana, there's no such thing as mana lies with people, mana whenua. Mana whenua lies with our tuakanas, the fish, the birds. They hold the mana, because if the river is crooked, the fish won't go up there. So they have more mana than we do. That's the mana whenua we're talking about. But we talk about mana whenua as if it's a property right. It should be more customary rather than property. That's but collaboration was the big thing I was talking about.
Thank you, Maru. And that may be something that we can look into in the new year. Kia ora. The next report is on in your agenda on page 14. We have our presenters, Morena Korua, and this is on the Kaituna Waiari River Access Project.
Okay. Kia ora
Morena.
tata katoa. Kia ora, Madam Chair. Before I get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the cool dude in the picture there for his guidance in guiding us collectively around realising the dream for Te Maru o Kaituna. So kia ora, Dean, for that. So at our last Te Maru Kaituna meeting, I provided a small overview of just some of this work with regards to the river access project. So that's project 11 of Te Tiniatona. And so this update here is just to give an idea, give a bit of an update on, you know, how things are looking, those preliminary findings based on engagement to date, based on research. And before I start as well, I'd just like to introduce Jason Crummer from Western Bay of Plenty District Council, who's our rec planner, who'll be continuing the work beyond this as well. So as a reminder, so this project 11 was around identifying priority sites to enhance river access for a range of reasons. And so as I noted before, it is based on research of particularly existing publicly available sources, and as well as engagement. So engagement with the Makitu Hoiwaka, Hapu, Iwi, and the various advisory groups and forums that are up for the Waiari. Initially, I was looking at priority sites, and you realise, you know, there's quite a lot of sites dotted around the Kaituna and Waiari catchments. And so something I looked at was widening the scope to identifying priority areas, which comprise multiple sites. And I'll explain that further shortly. And so, as I mentioned, the scope, geographic scopes, the Kaituna, so Paengaroa south, north, Paengaroa downstream, and the Waiari stream. Yeah, so as I mentioned about like the research, part of it's around building that picture. So there's a lot of existing information through the various settlements, your statements of association with Waiari Kaituna, no shortage of historic information from our iwi, as well as just talking to the community and visiting the sites. So in terms of the preliminary findings, I'll talk through each one in turn. I want to present 3 priority areas. So this is Te Kopua Bell Road area, Waiari Bridge, which is not a surprise, and of course Waitangi area, once again not a surprise. And there's also a couple of other areas that I'd like to share as well, where there are potential opportunities to enhance access as well. So I'm happy to take questions as I go through each priority area, or happy to take questions at the end. So yeah. So overview map. So as I mentioned, there's quite a lot of potential sites, and some of these ones are sites that came up a lot or regularly through engagement. And just to highlight the locations of those 3 areas, which, I mean, you all will know where these locations are anyway. So starting off with Te Kopua Bell Road, and part of the reason why I wanted to look at these as an area is that there's a lot of existing work happening outside of just the Bell Road boat ramp. So for example, we've got the wetlands on the right bank of the river, future wetlands coming, not to mention a lot of historic and culturally significant areas. So Parawa Pa, Karaka Pa, Te Kopua Pa, and of course the past sites for our former flax mills as well. And so this provides this opportunity to kind of look at the area as a whole, take a more holistic view, and in terms of enhancing river access. As I've noted there's a couple of land blocks that are surplus to requirements from Waka Kotahi, and I know that some of the councils are actually looking at acquiring or purchasing those lands. You know, so there's potential as well for usage for reserves and or wetlands. So some of the ideas that have come through. So at the moment, the district council is looking at some planned safety and amenity enhancements. So these are things that need to happen now. So examples here around judder bars, stormwater control, looking at furniture of some kind and amenity planting. But I think the overall recommendation for this area, it needs a concept plan. So looking at the area as a whole, it's not just looking at access for swimming, but also connectivity to the walkways that are close by and the cycleways. And of course, the opportunities to recognise, you know, the cultural significance and historical significance of these areas. So I guess key things here, this links in with other projects within Te Tini Atuna. And I think it's one of these win-wins. So if you can knock off some of these at the same time, it's quite handy. So key things here, this needs a collective approach. So all just the councils, tangata whenua, so this needs to be a collaborative effort to pull together the concept plan, because for each of you, you'll have particular things that you're working on now or that you want to be working on, and part of us is around connecting those ideas. Some of the advice I received from the regional council's rivers and drainage team is the reminder that this area is within, I guess, an active floodway. So any structures will need to be, I guess, resilient to floods, and allowance for regular maintenance as well. So part of us is about making sure that things are in the right place, I guess, to say the least.
Elva, I've got a question. Can I ask you a question? Is this in the area, which district council is this area? Or is it in the city, the district, or the district? Is it in bit of both?
Yes, there's crossover with the Western Bay District Council and I think Tauranga City Council as well. So very, very close to each other.
All right. So I guess I'm surprised that no concern has been raised. If I look at the top picture of the safety of that, because that's kind of like an unfenced swimming pool, and I don't see any signage around there. So I guess just to the councils that are sitting around this table from those respective councils, how have you looked at that area and that as and around really the safety issue that I see is lacking there?
I mean, this issue was raised at the last Waiari Kaitiaki meeting, and the discussion was, and the question was asked there around what was indicated by in terms of the boat ramp, and it says simply repair and upgrade. And I think Elva can probably explain better than me, but it wasn't envisaged a major revamp, but repair and, as you say, safety issues addressed. Make it more appropriate. But it wasn't to build some grand new structure that further compromised the
Okay, thanks. So I guess with the concept idea that you're talking about is probably the appropriate way to have an overall way of all the players being able to address the issue. Okay. Councillor Nees, I can see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm afraid that I'm going to have to leave shortly, but I just wanted to raise some work the Regional Council is doing on reviewing its navigation safety bylaws, because I think there is a potential overlap with this project. So we have a committee that's working on reviewing the bylaws, and that includes 3 tangata whenua and one of our Maori councillors, plus 3 other regional councillors. We have produced and signed off as a committee a draft navigation safety bylaw, which is going to the 14th of December council meeting for sign off for consultation. The consultation period is over the summer, and I'm a bit concerned that it's very important that this group actually has a look at it and provides feedback. So the consultation period is 18th of December to the 29th of February. But the formal hearing isn't until March. But the reason why I raise it is because obviously the Kaituna River has been an ongoing area where there's been safety concerns for swimmers. So there's 4 options identified in the proposed consultation document for the navigation safety bylaws. And one of them is to have passive recreation areas or swimming areas identified and designated as reserved for swimmers. So there's 4 options in total, 4 options identified. One's the status quo, one's the passive swimming areas. One's to remove the speed uplifting across the whole river, and another one is to remove the speed uplifting on the lower river. So I just am raising it now because I think it is of huge interest to Maru o Kaituna, but also there's a major potential overlap with this work. And I'm not sure of the timeframe for this work, but if it's going to feed into the bylaw review, it would be helpful to have those swimming areas identified by the end of February when the submissions close.
Thanks, Jane. And I do see Alva writing profusely, and so is Pim. So all taken on board, and thank you for your input. Thanks, Jane.
Just a request on the 14th of December, that consultation paper goes out, it gets approved to go out to public consultation. Was that correct? Yeah, okay. Can I just request that once that goes out, can a copy of that be sent to each member of Te Maru via email? I'm just considering the timeframe, the tight timeframe. So those of the Te Maru who are interested can read through that, and then if there's a possibility, we can either individually or as a group put a submission forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. No, Dean. Alva.
So this next slide just highlights just what a concept, for those who don't know what concept plans are, but I suspect most of you do, just gives you a bit of more of a bird's eye view of what could be happening and where. And once again, I mean, this is the concept plan that was prepared for Ōtaiparia Reserve. And I think something similar would be really useful for the Balroad Te Kopua area, just to show the connectivity as well across all the different bits, all the different activities that are in the area and the potential opportunities.
Are there any moorings being proposed for this area? For boat moorings? Sorry, it was so quick I can't see on the...
No, as far as I'm aware, there's no boat moorings plans. It's more the enhancement of the on-land based activities and facilities, but there is that provision for the Wakaama, I guess, boat launching, and what that looks like. We still need to work out with our parks and facilities team, but in terms of actual mooring sites, I don't believe there's provision for that in this concept plan.
Just a reason why I'm asking, it's a bit of planning, probably about 2 or 3 years into the future. We're considering having a Wakahaurua festival, and this has been brought up as a possible place to do that. So Wakahaurua are the voyaging canoes that go throughout the Pacific. And so at the moment, we've got a waka building program scheduled for Makatu, Te Puke, Tapuika, with the intention of creating a school of carving waka building. And the next one, I think Jack and them are taking down to is down South Island. So we're looking at proposing that the next one come up for here. But I was just wondering whether there were moorings, because we believe we can get the double hull waka through the cut, but if there's nowhere to fasten to, they'll just float there. So yeah, that was the main reason for that question, and because this is landing spots as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great to know, and something that we'll note down as well as part of that implementation. Can't commit to anything outside of the scope of the design here, but that's certainly something that we should be looking at.
That's great. Thanks, Dean. That's an exciting project, Dean. I just wanted to, I mean, given that Dean is giving that korero and it's not wasted, whether that can be a consideration in the development of the concept plan moving forward. Thank you.
Right, our second priority area is the Waiari landing area. So it's not just the bridge part, but we're looking downstream to the rail bridge, which is quite a popular swim spot, and all the way upstream towards Tawaki Pito Marae. So this is looking at opportunities to enhance access from both of the marae to the river, as well as improving the access for swimming at the rail bridge and at the road bridge as well. So there's been quite a lot of recommendations or ideas presented to date. So as you know, a wee while ago, Councillor Daly had put forward some ideas for the area, and the Waiari Kaitiaki Advisory Group had also provided some ideas. So I wasn't starting from scratch, is what I'm trying to say. So in this area, so between particularly from the road bridge to the rail bridge, there's a lot of unaddressed bank erosion. So I've had discussions with the Regional Council's Rivers and Drainage team this week, who will be looking into investigating the erosion issues and looking at opportunities as well to de-silt the riverbed. Because of the erosion, the river or the stream is very shallow. So which makes it quite not great for swimming, I guess what I'm trying to say. There's also some limitations with what you can do, because once again, this area is within an active floodway. And so I guess that provides some careful planning around what you place and where, so that you aren't in the way of machinery that are trying to do their maintenance. I had a good discussion about with the Rivers and Drainage team about the potential options for accessing the river. So at parts it's very steep or muddy, or it's just not easy to get down to. And so we're looking at a range of options, which could be as simple as just basic shaping of the bank so that kids can get in and out, or the option of like rocks. So I think once again, this calls for this notion of the concept plan, because you need to get everyone around the table. So for example, our tangata whenua reps, who have some very clear ideas of what they want, District Council, who I just found out yesterday have responsibility for the river under the bridge, and of course Regional Council with the floodway issue. So multi-agency approach, and you know, some really cool opportunities to connect our marae back to the river, back to the stream. And you know, there's quite a high amenity value here as well. It's right next to the Te Arakatia walkway, which is really well used. And I guess something to note, because both the Waiari and Bell Road areas are within the Rivers and Drainage scheme, there'd be also additional permits or authorities needed. But that's for Western Bay to add to their budget. And then the final priority area, so this is Waitangi, and I know there's been ideas for some time around putting in a jetty at the Waitangi Whenua Reserve. Hasn't yet landed at all, and I think this is once again another reason why you need a concept plan for this area. And what was interesting talking to the Rivers and Drainage guys is they'd never heard of this idea of the jetty, and it's within an active area, and they're actually they're engaging with hapu around some erosion protection. So once again, we've got agencies who are engaging with the same people in the same area for different things. So like a collaborative approach for this one would be awesome. Further upstream of the bridge with the wee circle is actually a really important swimming area for hapu. And I understand there had been some worries a few years ago around erosion protection works were put in, which hindered access. So I guess once again, this could be a potential win around restoring access to the areas that people are needing.
Question 3, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, are the purple areas, is that Māori land?
Yeah.
So that's indicating. We had a presentation some years back, I think we were in Rotorua, and there was a whānau trust who were wanting to do something with their land, which they indicated access to the river as well for kayaking or swimming, those sorts of things. Yes, I just wonder if it's worth picking that up and seeing if that trust is still keen to pursue that.
Absolutely, yes. I've still got the presentation from that, from the Ropu, and because that links in quite nicely with the Canaan's Road area, because I think that was just across the road, across the river.
Yeah, that's correct. And is Canaan here? Oh, okay. I'll wait for the.
Yeah. Actually, the next slide, funnily that. And so, yeah, as Jason had talked about with Otaiparia, they're already captured by a concept plan, and it's been quite good sort of connecting back with Maketu Huiwaka around some of the challenges and around their current access, which is not great, but it's covered by the concept plan, and some of the works for upgrades already budgeted for. So, and so the area that Dean was talking about was across the road from this area, Murifado, also known as Canaan's Landing, at the end of Kenana Road. So this is actually an area or a site of significant, look at the wording, significant historic significance. Aroha mai. That's how important it is. So this used to be like the landing spot for those who are coming up the river from Maketu and then heading up the Waiari to get to Te Puke. And so this part here is a district council reserve. So it's already at reserve status, potential place for, I guess, picnicking. And I'm not saying it's in the middle of nowhere, but it's in the future, it would be a cool spot to develop. Particularly if you're looking at connecting cycleways and walkways and things like that. But because it's not it's not highly used currently, I've just put it as an other area as opposed to a priority area. So it's on the radar, just not yet. That's what I'm trying to say.
Through you, Madam Chair. Murifaro is the old pa that used to be there. Tapuika had gone inland, and then when they returned to where we are today at Te Puke, Kenana was the area that we settled. And not only Tapuika, other iwi who were once coastal, who had to retire inland because of the Ngāpuhi push through, eventually came back. So hence the name Kenana. And so it was taken from biblical context of the Israelites returning. So that was the fashion of the religion and the belief at the time. And so that's the returning place. So known as Kenana today. There used to be steam or ships would come in from Tauranga. They'd come up the coast and they'd come up the Kaituna River and they'd settle here. And then those people and product that was being brought would then be put onto smaller canoes and then brought back up the Kaituna and then up the Waiari to that other side there, the bridge that we've seen. And then the produce was from there, then walked into Te Puke. And that was the establishment because there was no road around Papamoa. The only access was water. And so that's how Te Puke, part of Te Puke's establishment as a town came via the river. And so I think this is why I'm supportive of this particular spot is because I think it tells an early history of Māori and early settler coming into this area, and I suppose the expansion of how the town at Te Puke and that was created. So in your bullet point 1, significant historic significance is probably correct. Because it tells so many stories. So many stories can be interpreted at this site, but its connectivity to the other areas as well, I think is quite important. But I mean, that one would be one I would say, if we can, let's do something with it. And obviously that's with the Western Bay Council as well. So, yeah. Good luck.
Comment, the importance of rivers was equal to the railway lines. They were the means of transport for trade. So rivers played a key part in the economies of the time. But talking about I think that you need to consider a quadruple bottom line when you go into these, because I hear a lot of these social, recreational planning. Those may have an effect on the environmental. So when you talk about social and cultural, social and recreational, you also need to ask the question, will it have an impact on the environment? So it has to be a balance, quadruple bottom line balancing.
I think too, though, Maru, in this day and age with the concept plans that we are developing, there is greater recognition of the values and principles of Te Ao Māori, which I'm sure that will underpin a lot of the work that Alva's done, given I am familiar with a lot of her works where they are underpinned by tikanga. So take on board what you're saying. The other thing I wanted to comment is that, Dean, when I'm listening to you, it almost seems a shame that the kōrero that you're discussing is not heard by more than just us that sit around these tables and they're zooming in. So maybe somewhere in the concept plan, Alva, you look at, how do we do that? Do we need to have some sort of whare taonga down there that provides this? And so people have access to that and hearing the stories of the significance of these places. Because you're right, it's not just a picnic area. It's more than a picnic area. It's the significance you talk about. And I'm only just hearing these stories myself for the first time, and can see the value for anybody and everybody to be hearing about this place where they're dining and picnicking. Kia ora.
So I guess based on what I'm hearing of the significant historic significance of this place, would you suggest then that this becomes a priority area, not just an other area that we'll look at some time?
That would be my request. Yeah. And to tell that story, it's linked to the other site, which is at the Waiari. When Kevin Marsh used to sit on this board here for Western Bay, he used to remind me that it was his grandmother who was the first, or great-grandmother maybe, who was the first, and these are his words, white woman to walk into Te Puke. I says, oh, well, that's fine, but, some of our queer were pale too.
So I'm happy to elevate this one to a priority area, just because then once again, you're looking at the whole area as a whole, given that Muriwhānau Pa is close to the site and the associated storytelling opportunities associated with it, because that's the cool thing. And getting your video recorded, so other people can hear these too.
Need to participate. Maru, what about you? You want to participate in this? I know Hakaraya was there at one point when he as the minister and that sort of thing. So that's a strong waitaha kōrero.
I just want to share, I guess, a new site it's been on the radar, but we've just found some potential connections with an existing opportunity. So this is an oxbow on the Kaituna River, right by the I guess where the Paraiti comes out. This is actually a significant area to tangata whenua, and there's also an existing Ngāti Maru Kukere urupa just upstream of the confluence. I just want to quickly ask Pim, are you able to provide a quick overview of this opportunity that's coming?
I can, or I can ask Anna Dawson, who's the land management officer working in this area, perhaps to come to the table if she wants to.
Good day, everybody. I think most of you know me. I'm Anna Dawson. I'm the Land Management Officer for the Kaituna catchment. I'm currently scoping a environmental program with a landowner in this catchment, and there's a proposal for wetland creation in 3 hectares of currently just grazing, light grazing land. So that 3 hectares is the yellow area you can see to the southern side of the photo. And we're looking to, does that work? That's right. So part of that project is we're looking to connect the wetland hydrologically to the Kaituna River. So introducing some culverts so we can get some natural flow and create variable habitats throughout that wetland. But when I was on that property, we were sort of talking about the area in general, and to the north is one of the old Kaituna river loops. So it's now been partially separated from the Kaituna River. So we're looking to also connect that hydrologically back into the Kaituna River, if that's something that is a high priority for TMOC and for us as well. It's quite a significant area. It's right at the confluence of the Paraiti and Kaituna River. So we're still in the very early stages. The EP I have is in draft. Yeah, but there's more discussions to be had. Any questions on that?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, not a question. But you're quite right. This is quite a significant area where the Paraiti comes into the Kaituna. So I think any re-engagement of the old riverbed back into what's existing is a good move, and I think that the landowners in this particular area are really conscious of tikanga and Maori values, which is great. With the yellow area, what's in there currently?
So it wasn't kiwi fruit.
Yeah,
that's been removed since.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're just lightly grazing it with a few cattle just for a land management tool. Basically, it's not wet, but obviously it's underwater in winter. But it's pretty dry the rest of the time of the year, so it'd be cool to get some water moving through it.
With the landowner, the council or councils or whoever's involved, is tangata whenua involved in looking at the concept of what might be put there?
So, as I said, we're just in the really draft stages of just making sure that the landowner is happy with the draft proposal of the environmental program. But as part of that, we are hoping to bring the environmental program to Maru o Kaituna's next meeting, if that's possible.
But I also suggest in those conversations, you may want to talk to Tapuiki Iwi Authority, and Rapuni Wilson would be the correct person to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to do a lot of relationship stuff if this goes through with a resource consent as well. So, yeah, the landowners are keen to do most of it themselves as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Is most of the land privately owned in that picture?
So all that yellow area is privately land. That oxbow to the north is actually regional council owned land. Surrounded by the oxbow is regional council. Yeah.
Just a question. Do you know very much about regional parks, the regional parks?
I know of them.
Well, originally, the regional park was bought by 2 councils, Western Bay and Tauranga City Council. The fundamental point is that the regional parks was about the cultural, social, environmental well-being, and I would add economics too, because the regional council were expecting a bucket of money from the port funds, and there was a moratorium. That's why the 2 councils bought the parks, and there was a moratorium. Then the regional council eventually bought the regional parks. They actually bought 3. There was Papmore Hills. There was supposed to be one in the to do with the Kaituna, around the Kaituna, and the other one was in Wairo, the Wairo regional parks. And of course, they would play a key part in terms of environmental, social, as well as economics, because, economic benefits. Now, where that regional park is, some of the projects that you may be talking about may be able to be utilised for some of the projects that you're discussing. Where they put the regional park there, that may cover the areas like wetlands and all that sort of stuff. And to develop those will also help develop the region, because it helps the port. The port gets it. The port is the gateway to Rome, and that's where our economy comes from. Yeah, all the forests in the central North Island and so forth all ends up over here. So this could contribute to the social, cultural, environmental well-being of the region.
Thank you, Maru. I'll just let you know that Regional Council will be reviewing the Regional Council Parks policy next year, so can form part of that discussion.
And I guess just to add to the slide, there's, as you can see with the Urupa just upstream of the Paraiti, there's an existing access into the river. And so I initially thought this would be a great area, but particularly now that this has come on around enhancing access to the river and to the Urupa. Interestingly here, Partridge Lane, public access is only partway along the road. So there's a sign at halfway along saying no access to the river. So I think there are potential opportunities in the future around getting access along Partridge Lane, down to the river, down to the Urupa, down to this new area.
Madam Chair, the park next to the park, that access way is where the jet boats on the Kaituna used to go. That traditional area is called Wakataua, so it's always been a canoe launching place. And then you go further up from there, up the Mangarangi, that's just below Pakatori, and old Pa Te Arawa Pa there, and that's where the canoes used to go there for that eel there, and then come down to this place here at Wakataua. So it's always been connected to as an access place to the river, including when the jet boats were running there. Yeah. The paths, like there's the Urupa, I forget the name of the Urupa, but the pa that is there was Otamaparia, and I think the Huia Tapsul, and they had their orchard there, eh? So that's the pa in there, Otamaparia. I think the orchard still has that name, but it's after the pa. And I'd like to say that's the
It's
Tapsul.
Otamamari there. Otamamari.
Yeah, I kia ora. Quite history in this area.
And this is my final slide, just showing some of the other areas that people have suggested that would be good to stay on the radar of either the district council or the regional council. So some examples: Maungarangi Road, from what people have told me, has been a popular place for swimming and launching rafts for Waitangi Day celebrations. Tamatai Road are really keen on doing some riparian planting, and actually Pam, I might connect your team to the marae here. They're keen on establishing an area with rongoa plants and I guess for other purposes, but they're having some challenges down there with access due to rock protection works. So they are already working with the rivers and drainage team anyway. There've been some ideas around some swimming around the water treatment plant site because it is pristine. It's like a beautiful spot. But I guess that's something for consideration for the district council. And then finally, the Waiari Kaitiaki Advisory Group had suggested quite a few other areas. And so that kind of, they don't quite fall within my criteria of priority at this point in time, but I just want to make sure they're not lost. So I guess in terms of next steps for this project, because I'll be wrapping this up before Christmas, I still need to present these findings to the Western Bays Partnership Forum called Te Ihu o Te Waka o Te Arawa, just to check in as well as presenting to council. Along the way will be also doing some indicated cost estimates of what the next stage might look like particularly for those 4 priority areas. But it's pretty exciting. I think this kind of project helps to link in aspirations around not only just community access, but access for cultural purposes as well. So, yeah. Anything else to add? Yeah, so kia ora tātou katoa.
Oh, sorry, to the chair. Just a couple of observations. We paddled from Waitangi down to the Kaituna with a lovely group of rangatahi, and I think some of the great, because anything that gets access and gets our rangatahi in the water is incredible. And paddling down with these huge pipes with all this effluent coming in and the stink and the smell, and it was quite minor. Blew my mind a little bit, and especially our rangatahi. And I think one of the greatest challenges is finding water that's going to be safe for them to be in and not get sick from the water itself. And I think a couple other challenges from Rotorua Lakes is we had projects around building some more boat ramps and jetties, and we've had to completely change them because of the high lake levels. Like Rotorua Ehu is up 4 or 5 meters. I mean, projects we had on Rotorua Ma, we've had to completely scrap those boat launches areas because they just don't meet the changing water levels. And I think some things we're starting to look at is floating jetties. So jetties that have more ability to go up and down and that also helps access for if they've got to get in and out of the water, a jetty that's not too high or not too low. So I think the final one we put on was, and I know I've being a guy that's been around the river and where I've pulled people from, is a few of the trees in and around the willows and various things, because that's where people drown. That's where they get caught up on, especially when that river's moving. Definitely not, I mean, more access we can get our rangatahi into the water, the better. But it was eye-opening to paddle down that section and go, the kids were like, oh, I don't want to be in it, and it was quite sad actually. So, but it was a beautiful paddle, and it's a beautiful section for learning to paddle and put in waka and all those things. But that's going to be the greatest challenge, is making it safe to be in and immersed in it, I think.
Thank you. That's almost a submission to the navigational bylaw review. Oh, and I understand Jo may be able to address that in her presentation. Jo? I will leave that for Jo's presentation. Any other questions to Alva? No, that seems like it. Thanks, Alva. Excellent presentation. Again, you've got a lot of work ahead to get it. When are you, what time frames are you looking at?
So I guess I'm reaching the conclusion of the feasibility stage of where to start. And so I'll be wrapping that up before Christmas. And then Jason's role will be to keep things moving.
Yeah, I guess from my side of this project, it'll just be looking at what do the findings tell us. So we've identified these key sites. So that's the what. The next step is the how, and how we can work with all the other agencies and tangata whenua to make all this come to life. So that'll be part of the challenge, and part of my challenge in the new year, which I'm looking forward to. Because this has been, I guess, coming from being an ex-Aucklander, I'm happy to say ex-Aucklander, who didn't know anything about the Kaituna, didn't know an awful lot about Papamoa. It's been pretty amazing just learning through Alva, looking at the different areas and hearing conversations, coming to these forums and hearing people speak about how important these areas are. It's really, really exciting to be able to be part of this team, to bring something together. But it's all very, very nice saying that. Still a lot of work to do. But thank you.
Just before you go, Alva, so your presentations to the councils, are you talking the Western Bay and Regional Council?
At this stage, it's primarily Western Bay, because this is a Western Bay project and I'm contracted through the Western Bay of Plenty District Council.
Okay, I would like I'm going to extend an invitation that you put on the radar somewhere that you do a presentation to Komiti Māori.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we have the full council around that table, and I think it's exemplary and where you're going with it. And I just want to bring it to the attention of the regional council so that it supports the project as well.
Always happy to go there.
Oh, just to the councillors, I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations of that report. So can I have a mover, please, to receive the report and the presentation that's been made by thank you. You're moving. Thank you. So that's Andy moving, and can I have a seconder, please? Nick, excellent. All those in favour say aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Carried. Well, we must be down on the home straight. Our last presentation. Hi, Joe. On the Essential Freshwater Policy Program, and that's in your agenda on page 22. Over to you, Joe, and Margaret. Kia ora kōrua.
Kia ora. We're just here to just share with you an update, the latest update for the freshwater program, and just got a couple of slides here just sharing with you what is outlined quite briefly in the paper on page 22. It's about the feedback that we've received during the April to September period of time where we had the community engagement period for all of our 13 freshwater management unit areas. Oh, we've got the, I'm expecting it to do itself. Apologies for that. So very quickly, this is just a snapshot of the material that's been shared with our strategy and policy committee back in 31st of October. So that just represents the amount of feedback from which parts of the rohi that we've received. So we ran 35 in-person events across the 12 FMUs. We didn't get out to Motiti. There's 5 online seminars and then online feedback, etc. So overall, it took a lot of effort to do those 35 in-person hui around those in that reasonably short period of time. So we had 530 people attend those various events, and this is just a quick breakdown of the attendees were asked to say whether they wanted, if they wanted to, which category they fitted into. So as you can see, a lot of people didn't share with us what group they were in, but there's sections of the community. Obviously, there's people that are fit into more than one category, so they've highlighted to themselves which one they fell in. But there was people viewing the workshops, recorded workshops. By and large, it was quite small numbers at some of the events, but really good kōrero with the people that we did go to. Oh, actually, I didn't share with you that. That was a really good event that we had, and you can't see that, but that's at Ngāti Whakaue Marae, at Whakaue Marae down at Maketu, and I think you'll see that you feature there, Maru, there. Come along that day. It was a pretty cold day there in end of June. Yeah, but yeah, great kōrero that we had with the people that came, but it's reasonably small numbers of people.
It's great that we saw Maru in the picture. We'll be able to get him to give us an update as well.
Ka pai. So in your paper, you'll see that there's, and you'll remember that we had our freshwater booklets, and after the freshwater booklets were created, further information came to hand, and there was in your paper there's links to those extra pieces that we got quite a bit of feedback on. And this is just a snapshot of the retired lowland areas that council will be considering what options there are, whether they, what minimum standards might apply and where, and so the various options, and looking very carefully at costs and benefits of those into the new year, and with feedback on the draft. And it's fair to say some of the councillors around the room have had a bit of a session on this, and some of them are very difficult options. Going to be some really challenging decisions needed towards the end of next year when we formulate the proposed version of the changes that we need to make.
Just the shades of green in there, what does that indicate?
Yeah, so the light green there is the projected sea level rise by 2050. So that's not a council line, that's just looking at the projected sea level rise. So showing that the lower Kaituna there is going to be, the farming is going to be impacted. Even naturally occurring climate, well, it's not naturally occurring, it's the climate change requirements. So the green line is, the dark green line there is the line that's already quite impacted by salinity, and fair to say is limits farming in those areas. And the green line is somewhere in between, that might be the one of the options that council looks at, whether we restrict farming there. Did you want to add anything, Pim? You've got probably a bit more visibility on the options there in terms of on the ground.
Seeking the go ahead from the chair. Oh yeah. So the reason that council was looking at this, which is it's a pretty radical option, right? Using the RMA to try and achieve something like this. It's simply because of the scale of the water quality challenges that the two estuaries face. And amongst the catchments in the Bay of Plenty, other than the Rotorua lakes, which are particularly sensitive to nutrients and other contaminants, these two shallow estuaries are probably the next cabs on the rank in terms of the challenges. And so there are different ways to get there. And, one of the ways to get there is to do what we did with the Sprats farm at Pukahina. Other ways might be to try and introduce controls on land use that are a bit stricter in these areas, because they have the potential for a disproportionate effect on the receiving environment. I wasn't at the workshop the other day, but I understand that, councillors were vigorously debating this one, and that it is a particularly challenging provision to try and get through, but it does potentially have some quite significant benefits as well as significant costs and risks. So, yeah.
So part of
that Jim might like to outline how the area that council's seeking to retire at Cutwater Road relates to that green on the map. And also I'd endorse perhaps what Joe was saying in terms of not just wetness, but salinity impacts on the land. So those dark green areas are generally already of pretty modest value for farming.
Just responding to Councillor Scrimmage's comment there, where I had put the mouse just a second ago. Sorry, Jenny. Yep, so that little bit there, the dark green bit, corresponds exactly to the 30 hectares that will become a combination of treatment wetland for the 600 hectare catchment upstream of that area, and natural coastal wetland. So about a 2-to-1 ratio of coastal wetlands at lower cost and treatment wetlands at higher cost.
So some of the other options that were in the material that we engaged on were stock exclusion and setbacks from waterways, things like that. So this one's, there's a central government stock exclusion regulations that already apply, but the council would can think about whether there are other requirements, regional requirements that we would need in as well as, or whether they just leave it with the central government requirements there. So, but again, it's to do with looking at ways to address the nutrient loss that we really need, that to really go a moderate way, and only a moderate way, to the health of the estuary. And it's a huge ask. So we have to look at all of the options on the table and the costs and benefits of those, and the community feedback, both in that April to September period, but also part of what councils will be asked to do is to see whether they would be prepared to release a draft freshwater changes early next year. And that will provide an opportunity for iwi authorities, tangata whenua, and some targeted stakeholders to really have a look at the draft rules and just try and understand which way they would like to provide advice to council in the early next year. The other one was about restricting on steep slopes. So whether there was the range of options that were put on the table with different slopes and different restrictions, and it was fair to say we got a fair bit of feedback on those options and what that might mean for some farms, some farming communities, and especially in terms of some of the bigger impacts in some of the freshwater management units. And so Margaret's going to just share some of the key themes that came through the tangata whenua feedback.
Kia ora koutou. So there was the community engagement from April to September with those forums that Joe spoke about. In terms of tangata whenua engagement, we did our hui arohe, which I probably let you guys know about that earlier in the year in May. We also had some targeted engagement with groups and iwi and hapu that wanted to engage with us. But from the hui arohe, these were the main themes that were coming through. Obviously, tangata whenua always want meaningful engagement with our organisation and organisations such as yourselves, right from inception through to like decision making and implementation that came through strongly. They also are quite active already on the ground with their own monitoring and projects on restoration that are supported by ourselves. And but tangata whenua also, there's that recognition that the capability and capacity of their people is essential to carry out, their kaitiakitanga. They also look at other more natural methods, I guess, to try and resolve some of the problems of the wai. And in terms of MPSFM, mahina kai value is a compulsory value, so that we try to emphasise that it is a compulsory value now, and it's how that is articulated in the planning context. So we're still doing a bit of work around that. Also, they questioned the water allocation methodology. They had concerns over the municipal water demand, given the different sort of housing projects or proposed housing projects that are going on throughout the rohe. Data sovereignty was a key thing that they also talked about in terms of their mātauranga Māori. How was that going to be received? How was it going to be stored? Some weren't willing to give that type of really in-depth mātauranga. So, these are things that we have to think about. And also whether I guess resourcing is always an issue for iwi and hapu. They do lack the resources, although and they try their best. They do rely on funding, and so it's how best can they continue to do their works, independently, but with support as well. So these were sort of some of the main sort of issues that came through tangata whenua engagement. They also talked about, we've told you this time and time again. So we did try to emphasise that a lot of the fundamental work to get to some of the planning provisions has been through going through, various submissions, PC 9 and 10, going through their iwi hapu management plans, drawing concepts and values out of those to help inform some of the work that we are doing. Obviously, we have ongoing engagement. We'll have ongoing engagement right through to notification next year. I think the important thing too for this group also is that along with that navigational bylaw that Councillor Nees is talking about, our timeframe is also that January to March. So a draft is going to be released in January for feedback. So it's a good opportunity for Te Maru to perhaps give feedback on the draft plans that are going to be released at that time. So at this stage so that was sort of April to September, post-September, because we were going to look at another round of hui arohi, but we had a change we pivoted a bit, and so we've looked at targeted engagement with those iwi and hapu that want to engage with us, but also those ones that we're already carrying out projects or who we've already have had some engagement with, just so we're coming down to the nitty-gritty in terms of in the planning context. So it was more to draw out some of that type of discussion with them. Kia ora.
Just a little bit more of the Kaituna specific feedback that came out of that April to September. We had general agreement with the Kaituna boundary, which was good because that coincides with the co-governance boundary. There was there wasn't a lot of Kaituna specific feedback, but most of it preferred option B in the vision, and I don't expect you to remember what option B was, but it was the fuller of the two, the one that had supports this, that and the other, and protects this, that and the other, and had a particular statement about the health of the Makatu estuary. So it looks like that fuller version seemed to be the preferred. Mixed views on water quality. There was some people that loved the water quality. Other people said it was terrible. There was some quite concerned people who had similar observations that Councillor Chater had mentioned about the paruness of the effluent of the discharges along the awa. So very varying. Various concerns there: overfishing, climate change, concerns about the urbanisation at Te Tumu and the increase at Paengaroa and what that might do, and some suggestions there for positive things like perhaps encourage water storage and filtering through wetlands and things. So that over the two, overall, there seemed to be quite a bit of support for the sensitive environments. So as Pim mentioned, the two estuaries are in need of significant improvement. The nutrients are in need of improvement to help the health of those estuaries, and also the lakes are sensitive. So that came through in the feedback, and also support for the drainage and flood protections in those lower areas. Right, just one more slide, I think.
Just a question, Joe, through the chair. It said some people were concerned with overfishing. So was there any other explanation around overfishing? Like, is that the rivers or the lakes or sea or?
Yeah, it was just a statement made at one of the drop-in sessions. So there wasn't a lot of context to that, but
I only
and-
asked because
Yeah.
I've heard tangata whenua talking about the take of eels and from commercial fishermen and that sort of thing. And so I was just wondering if that was in reference to that or was it something else?
That particular comment wasn't in reference to that, but I do know we did have a conversation with an elderly Māori gentleman at the Te Puke War Memorial, and he was quite pleased that we'd put our finger on the right taonga species in the habitat restoration stuff, and he did mention whether it was time to remove commercial fishing from the freshwater part. Now, that's going to be a stretch a little bit far from things that we can do in terms of implementing the freshwater management. We have to stick to our knitting, which is more about making sure that the water quality and quantity is good enough for the habitats of those taonga species.
I suppose that's the context I was asking, and was it around whether it was that because as you rightly pointed out,
Taipuri side
that's
of it
outside of of this brief here. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yeah. One more slide is just the next steps, and as Marg alluded to, council are working on, staff are working at pace, and it's fair to say it really is at pace on drafting the freshwater changes that were required for implementing the national policy statement. And also, you'll remember we're reviewing the land and freshwater parts of the plan as well, so it's a little bit manic. So there are going to be freshwater changes to the regional policy statement and the regional plan. And in terms of Kaituna specific, the regional plan freshwater changes need to make sure that we're giving effect to the regional plan change, your plan change 5, so the river document. So we'll make sure that we're keeping that thread going in the freshwater changes. So we've had a number of workshops with our strategy and policy committee, and the next ones are the 13th of December, and that's a really big one. And if that goes well, the 14th of December, staff will be seeking approval to release a draft, as Mark's indicated, in January to March. Now, it's going to be really targeted consultation. It's not going to be a public engagement. There's a requirement in the Resource Management Act, in the back of the Resource Management Act, to provide draft changes to iwi authorities ahead of time. So that will be to meet that obligation. The targeted consultation will also include tangata whenua that have been involved, that Mark's talked about picking up those people along the way, as well as some of our other requirements like the new ministers. I'm not even sure who are our ministers, but there's some key people in those puzzles. There's also our advisory groups, the rural and environmental advisory groups, etc. And some of those key advisory groups, trying to make sure that we get enough feedback on the draft material to help inform some of those options, and then we'll work those up a little bit more over the year to get to a point where we can we'll get to a proposed plan to notify late December. So councillors won't make any decisions about those options until after they've got that feedback. The feedback's worked up further, and so they'll be making decisions late in 2024 to then release as a proposed change, and that becomes part of the more formal part of the process, where you have submissions and further submissions and things, just like normal plan changes. But yeah, it's fair to say the timing, the reason we're going out early with a draft, and it is a very drafty draft, there are gaps in it, and that provides particularly iwi authorities and tangata whenua the opportunity to fill those gaps. If we ask for the advice early, The reason for that is that it gives us time to be able to really genuinely respond to that feedback and actually build in the advice into the plan, whereas it's such a tight time frame that the government, the legislation provides. If you were to do normal plan changes, you might take a number of years to get through these bits, but it's a very condensed process. So it'll be a warts and all draft if council allows that to be sent out the door, but it's that opportunity, then genuineness, that we want to provide enough time early in the piece so that we can actually use the feedback. So Te Maru Kaituna's first meeting is, I think, 24th of February. So it's going to be quite late into that piece. So, and it overlaps with the NAV and safety bylaws. So there's a lot going on in that early new year. So yeah, Te Maru Kaituna might wish to think about how they might deal with that. We'll definitely, we heard your request there, Chair, to send things out to each of the Te Maru members. We will do the same for this, but it's fair to say it'll be New Year reading, and you'll be well into by the time that you meet. That's it.
Just a priority, I suppose. I think that there should be an investigation primarily on wastewater first, and then drinking water, and then stormwater. The reason for that is if you identify wastewater, you'll end up with half clean drinking water, if you like, after you've discovered the wastewater, and the stormwater comes later. I say that because there may be some building techniques that needs to be put into place through plumbing, whereby you've discovered through identifying the wastewater that there's a possibility to have secondary use water banking, and all those particular issues to drink with how much clean water you got. And when you go into clean water, you'd resolve half the problem. And then stormwater just comes later. Prioritizing wastewater is first. And I sort of worked that out when we were at Pungkawa. We were at Pungkawa. I think that was quite a good hui down Pungkawa, because it's Rotehu Forest, and that is in the middle of, there's geothermal on that side, and the lakes and rivers and streams, and it links to all the waterways. And I found that Pungkawa meeting was quite good. It had all the features.
Kia ora. So our freshwater changes will talk about wastewater, stormwater, and the drinking water to some extent. So the district councils, so that regional policy statement changes can direct district plans and regional plans. And so there will be a bit of there'll be some direction there that the districts that deal with the wastewater, the stormwater, and the drinking water would need to take cognizance of when they're writing their district plans, and that may have an impact on the building requirements, for example. Another one that's in that regional policy draft set is requiring water sensitive design, which is exactly, Maru, the good idea that you'd raised there, getting people to think about that sort of soft engineering and making sure, for example, stormwater, making sure we perhaps don't have, hard infrastructure. Maybe we have swales that pick up stormwater and are doing that sensitively, exactly those sorts of things. Yeah, so definitely a there's a connection, but the three waters part of it, the wastewater, stormwater and drinking water, are primarily for the district council to provide for the community.
I think that once you get into it, it's not only the district councils that will be dragged into it. It'll be a whole host of networks that will have to come into it. And I always say that they should bring their checkbook with them. Yeah.
We don't have any other questions. Look, so we've come to the end of our last presentation. Thank you, Joe. I did see on that you had a workshop for the 13th of December. Well, who did that apply to? That was part of your consultation process, or was it that for the Maru?
No, not for the Maru. That's
Your
the
process.
Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on the 13th for a workshop,
Thank
then
you.
full council meeting the next day. Going to be busy.
Before we close though, I'll take and ask for a mover and a seconder to receive those reports.
Move.
Dean, thank you. Seconder, thank you, Andrew. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Thank you, carried. Well, that does bring us to an end. All of those participants on Zoom, thank you for tuning in. To the members, I guess Dean has extended his thanks to us all, but I too want to extend a thank you to Dean for his great chairmanship of our committee, keeping us going, the mahi that he's participated with the projects and activities that we have been able to achieve through the Maru, and projects that we are looking at going forward. Nō reira ngā mihi kia koe, Dean. So to all of us, yes, let's take a break at the end of all of this because there's a lot of work that's coming to us in the new year, and look forward to seeing everybody back at the table. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to staff who have done it. Already been mentioned, the fabulous job that they do, and our participants.